Hello and welcome to Berry Aftercare, the podcast. We are continuing with our conversation on communication styles because communication is critical when it comes to your healthy lifestyle, to include your healthy Berry Aftercare lifestyle. But seriously, if you want to have healthy relationships, get things you want more in life, you've got to learn some communication skills that are going to advance your desires. So today we're going to be talking about one that will not help you. We've talked about, we started with assertive communication. That's the one you want. Yes, let me repeat it. Assertive is what you want. Direct, straightforward, respectful, kind, compassionate, honest. I feel, I would like. Boom. Assertive communication. That's what we want. Then we went into aggressive communication, not what we want. Aggressive communication will not get you anywhere, but maybe in jail, depending upon how aggressive you are, or maybe in divorce court. I don't know, but it ain't good. Today, we're going to be talking about passive communication, and we're going to roll the two videos into one or the two topics. I'm going to do examples while I describe, or in this same video. We're not going to do a separate one on examples of passive communication. But we will talk about how to tweak passive communication into assertive communication. Now, one of the people on the Berry Aftercare website or Facebook page made a great comment about these communication skills. She said, this takes effort. This is not easy. And I said, for sure. This takes quite a bit of effort. But once you get the hang of it, and you can really break it down into 3 easy steps to become an assertive communicator. I think this is a good idea. I think this is not such a great idea. I feel sad. I feel scared. I feel lonely. This is what I would appreciate. Boom. That's assertive communication. Today, like I said, we're going to be talking about passive communication. Oh, how passive communication can lead to emotional eating and regain, which is what we're trying to avoid in life. And we're going to go beyond bariatrics and talk about how passive communication can get you in a world of hurt in relationships, generally speaking. What makes for a passive communicator? What happened, or why are you a passive communicator? How did this become your primary style? And how do I become more assertive if you've been passive in the past? So again, I just want to remind you that people aren't typically just one of these. We have a primary, probably, but hopefully we have some assertive communication in our repertoire so that maybe at work or in public, at least, maybe we use better communication skills. I don't know. We can all work to improve. So in general, again, assertive communication is the most respectful, the most likely to get you a positive response from somebody, but not always. Not always. We're not responsible for what other people repeat back to us, but it is a way for us to feel good about ourselves. And when we feel better about ourselves, we're less likely to engage in behavior that's going to harm us. Overeating or eating the wrong things being just one of those possibilities. All right, remember, don't be hard on yourself. I and most of us have engaged in all of these less than healthy communication styles in the past. So what's passive communication? Well, basically, if we're a passive communicator, we don't really say much of anything. We don't say how we're thinking. We don't say how we're feeling. We don't share our needs with other people. We avoid sharing what's going on with us. Passive communicators definitely keep their thoughts to themselves. They may keep their opinions to themselves. And people who have this kind of communication style, sometimes they give in to other people, right? Because they want to avoid conflict at all costs. I've heard so many people describe themselves as this way. I want to avoid conflict at all costs. Well, that may be because you saw conflict demonstrated in an aggressive way, which is, of course, we all want to avoid that. However, as an adult, if we want to be a healthy adult, we need to learn to be willing to share our thoughts, feelings, and opinions, to say what we want, to be an assertive communicator. Otherwise, and we'll talk about this just in a minute, you're going to get walked all over. You're putting yourself out there to be a victim, not intentionally, but that's often what happens with passive communicators. So if you're intentionally, that's a heck of a word. It's not the one I meant to use either. But if your purpose is to avoid conflict at all cost, this may be something for you to get some professional help with, because it's not easy to overcome the tendency to want to hold it all in, but it is a very useful and appropriate and adult thing to do, is to share your thoughts, your feelings, and your desires. So maybe these passive communicators who hold it all in, maybe they don't share how they think or feel or what they need because they feel guilty if they stand up for themselves. That's a possibility. I feel guilty if I say what I think. I'm being selfish. Or maybe they were taught that being direct and honest, and in some cultures, this may be true. So we have to be culturally sensitive and take into consideration that maybe in this person's culture, to speak up or to speak out in a direct way was considered to be very disrespectful. Passive communicators can come across as being extremely submissive, which means it's easy for other people to take advantage of them, which is not cool by the person doing the taking advantage of, but it's easy to do. So one of the reasons you want to learn to stand up for yourself is so that you don't allow, you're setting a boundary. I will not allow you to take advantage of me. I will not allow you to trample all over my feelings. I will not allow this. But to set that boundary requires some behavior on your part as well. And in this case, it's to speak up and say, I'm not okay with you talking to me that way. If you're going to continue to talk to me that way, I'm going to remove myself from this situation until we can come together and talk respectfully to one another. Easy? No. Not easy for pretty much anybody, but especially if you've been a person to keep it all in for a long time. That's why I say you need professional help, because this requires practice. Practicing with somebody, a therapist or a good friend, who's going to guide you and be kind with you and be gentle with you as you notch your way up from complete silence to maybe whispering to that person what you think, maybe using a very low voice, then using a louder voice, and using good eye contact. So somebody who will help you learn these skills until it feels more comfortable to you, because it can be a very intimidating thing. So another thing with passive communicators is other people often look at them as people pleasers, and they may describe themselves as a people pleaser. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be cooperative. There's nothing wrong with wanting to do things to please people that you know and love. It becomes a problem when and if you do so while neglecting yourself. It becomes a problem when you are suffering or when you are finding yourself filled with resentment. So it can be both and, right? I can both like to please other people and speak up for myself. So in this case, it's okay to want to please people, not in the negative connotation of the word people pleaser, because that kind of means I'm going to let you walk all over me. That's not what we want for anybody. And I certainly don't want that to be the case for you. We don't need to allow anybody to walk all over us, but we've got to be the one to muster up the courage and the strength to say, I need to speak up. I need to say what I'm thinking. I need to say how I'm feeling. So passive communicators, they're going to have a posture that is an indication to other people that they're trying to draw within themselves. An assertive communication person, right? They're going to be out there. They're going to have their chest bowed and they're going to have the angry face. And a healthy assertive communicator is going to have good eye contact. They're going to be relaxed. There's calm amongst their demeanor. They're looking at you kindly, respectfully. They're listening. A passive person is going to have very poor eye contact, right? They're most likely going to be looking down or away. It's difficult for them to make eye contact. So direct eye contact is something that someone who wants to move out of a passive communicator role into a more assertive communicator role is going to have to learn to practice their eye contact. And they may also kind of hunch over, round in, kind of like you're kind of hugging into yourself. Their chin may be lowered to their chest. It's kind of like they're curling into themselves. And by doing so, they don't have, it's like easier to hide. It's kind of like hiding within myself. Verbal indicators of a passive communicator may be continually putting themselves down. So not only am I looking like I'm shy and maybe afraid, but the things that are coming out of my mouth are a dead giveaway to somebody else that if you want to take advantage of me, here I am. I'm putting myself down. I'm shying away. I'm an easy target for somebody who's looking to take advantage of somebody. That's not how we want to posture or present ourselves in the world. It's intended to be self-protective, but it's sort of a neon sign that says, take advantage of me. So if we want to protect ourselves emotionally, it's really better to have good eye contact. If you want to keep what you say to a minimum, that's okay. As long as what you're saying is, this is my opinion, end of story. This is how I feel, end of discussion. This is what I would appreciate. Doesn't have to be a long diatribe like when I get on here and I make podcasts and I just ramble. It might be just like, no, I would prefer not to go there. It might be, I feel upset when you talk to me that way. It might be, I would prefer to go to this restaurant. Very simple, straightforward, honest, and direct. All right. So a lot of passive communicators are self-deprecating. And self-deprecating, as you probably know, it's a passive way of dealing with our own insecurities, our own perceived shortcomings. And we sometimes use it to fit in or to deflect criticism. In the bariatric community, I have a lot of people say they engage in self-deprecating comments so that they beat other people to the punch. They're going to make a joke about their weight so somebody else doesn't. They're going to put that out there. I already know. I'm going to say something about it myself so you don't have to. But it's unkind towards yourself. And we don't want to be unkind toward ourselves. We want to have faith and trust and feel valuable to ourselves regardless of our height, our weight, I was going to say our breast size, our hair length, whether we have hair on our head at all, right? People have a lot of insecurities. And hopefully we can find respect for ourselves regardless of where we land on any of these continuum. Sometimes it's not easy. And yet, the bottom line truth for all of humanity, regardless of anything related to our individual traits and attributes, we all have equal value. End of story. Mic drop, whatever you want to say to that. Every human being has equal value. And that's the truth. So we have to recall and remember and remind ourselves I have equal value no matter where I'm at or who I'm with. I may not have equal height. I may not have equal amount of hair on my head. I may not have the same number of teeth. I may not have the same level of intellectual ability. I may not have whatever it is. But I have equal value by virtue of being a human, just like all the other people. We have to remember that. That puts us on an equal playing field, regardless of everything else. People who are passive and have a passive communication style often apologize excessively, even for things they don't need to apologize for. Like, oh, I'm sorry. You didn't do anything. What are you sorry for? I don't know. I'm just sorry. And you'll hear the words, I'm sorry, very often as they speak. It's almost like they're apologizing for existing. Go back to what I said a minute ago. We all have equal value. We don't need to apologize for existing. We don't need to apologize for having an opinion. We don't need to apologize for having a feeling or a thought or a desire. As long as we are respectful to others and give them equal respect for their thoughts, their feelings, their opinions. So if you find somebody who's apologizing in situations and it's just like a habit, chances are they are a very passive person, a very passive communicator, and are going to try to avoid conflict at all costs. Again, if this is you, please do yourself and everybody else in your life a favor, because it's not easy for the other people either. Because the passive communicator is always going to defer to your decision, your opinion, they're going to be like a chameleon. If you like that, I like that. Well, if you like that, I like that. If you want to go here, I'll go here. And they may or may not want to, really. And I have met two people in my 30-year-long career who were such passive communicators that they really had no idea at the point they were at in their adult life what their honest opinions were. They had lost such a sense of themselves so long ago that literally when I would ask, what's your favorite color, they didn't know. And that is so sad to me. And the two cases that I'm thinking of, they both had parents who made all the decisions for them. They had very, very little autonomy as children through their adolescence and into their early adult lives about anything. And so they didn't know what they liked or wanted because they never had to think about it. And if they had thought about it, they didn't express it. Other kids may become very rebellious or defiant, but for whatever combination of personality traits and temperament, some people just cave in on themselves. So it took a lot of work to bring these people out of their passiveness to explore even who they were or who they wanted to be. Now, that can be relevant after weight loss surgery too, because I've worked with many people after weight loss surgery whose bodies change and whose relationships with people change, and they're like, I don't know who I am. So the question becomes, who do you want to be? What are your values? Why do you want to lose weight? Why do you want to keep the weight off? That's my value. I value my health. I value my relationships. I value doing things I want to do in life, even though I don't know what they are yet. I value, what do you value? Then say, okay, if I'm a person who values my health, what do I want to put into my body? If I'm a person who values my health, how do I want to move my body to get some exercise? So even if you have some questions or uncertainty about who you are as you go through this process, or who you are because of your growing up circumstances, ask yourself, who do I want to be? And then work toward that. Define your values and work toward that. Another thing that really passive communicators do is, like I said, they rely on other people to make decisions, not just for them, but about life. So they may constantly agree or go along with, where do you want to go for dinner? Wherever you want to go. What do you watch on TV? Whatever you'd like to watch. Would you like to go see a movie? If you'd like to. Maybe they hate movies. Do you want to go bowling? Maybe they know they hate bowling, but sure, that'd be nice. So they're too afraid, for whatever reason, and we'll get to those reasons in just a minute, to speak up with their own reality, their own truth. Sometimes it's hard to understand or hear a passive communicator. It's almost as if they're so uncertain about whether it's okay or not to even say this. It's sort of like they're kind of mumbling, and it's like, well, okay, well, maybe I'd like to go to. It's like, excuse me, what did you say? And again, it's such a setup to be taken advantage of, even though it may not be the intention of the passive communicator or the other people. Kind of human nature is, if you're going to let people take advantage of you, they will. Not to be malicious necessarily, but some people just will. And then you know what happens on the other end of that is people become resentful, being taken advantage of. So it gets a little tricky. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. A passive communicator may end up feeling really overlooked, feeling dismissed. And it's a contrast. It's like, on the one hand, I want to be seen, I want to be part of, I want to be included. On the other hand, I make it real easy for people to overlook me because I'm not willing, A, to look face to face in your eyes. Secondly, I'm not willing to say what I think. So a person who has a healthier self-worth, which obviously I just did a spoiler alert, passive communicators often have a low self-esteem. But somebody with a higher level of self-esteem isn't gonna want to be with somebody who's super passive. It's like, I don't want to hang out with a mouse. I want to hang out with somebody who has an opinion. Share with me. So if your cup is this low and you're hanging out with somebody whose cup is much fuller, that's not going to last real long because it's unequally yoked. We like to hang out with people who are at about the same level of mental and emotional health that we are. It's true. All right. A passive communicator, their language may be very vague, so they can avoid taking responsibility. It's like, would you like to go here or there? Oh, really, either one is all right. Well, do you have a preference? Well, I kind of like this one, but over here I like that one. So they're not really answering. They're very, very uncertain, very vague. They're not going to have a strong opinion. They're not going to voice a differing opinion from the crowd for sure. And it's a way to avoid taking a stand or creating any waves. So they remain very non-committal, but that can suggest to others that they're submissive. Being submissive, not sharing much, tends to get you overlooked, which makes you feel left out. It's a really vicious cycle, and I don't think it's intentional on any part of that equation. It is partly human nature. So sometimes things you might hear or see from a passive communicator, we talked about some of that nonverbal, not looking very directly, kind of mumbling, not speaking up, kind of closing in on themselves to hide or avoid. Things you might hear. Well, I suppose that's fine. Again, non-committal, not having an opinion, whatever you'd like. Sure, we can go with that. I'm not sure what direction I'd like to go in. What would you suggest? I'm getting somebody else to make the decision for me. If you think you might be a passive, you probably know by this point in the conversation here, right? But maybe ask yourself these questions. Am I uncomfortable asking for what I need? Now, that question alone may or may not put you in the category of a passive communicator. It might depend on the circumstances. It might depend on who you're asking. It might depend on if you've been shut down from this person a lot of time before, but we're looking for a pattern. So am I uncomfortable asking for what I need? Do I worry that other people are going to be upset with me if I ask? Do I worry they'll be upset with me if I have a different opinion? So a lot of concern about what are people going to think, and I don't want to cause any waves and I don't want to make anybody mad. Do I intentionally avoid being what people might consider difficult or needy, like get me out of the spotlight. I don't want to make your life difficult. I just don't want to be seen, don't want to be heard. Do I often try to avoid conflict? Do I sometimes feel resentful or upset that other people don't really notice me or take my needs seriously or take into account my opinion? Yeah, that's the tough one there because we set it up. If we're the passive communicator, we have set it up so that people aren't going to take notice, aren't going to seek it out after a while, aren't going to take you seriously. Kind of a double-edged sword. So being passive protects me because I don't have to put myself out there, but it leaves me lonely or isolated or angry or resentful. So if I don't want to feel those things, and it's so easy to blame it on other people. Well, they don't care about what I think. Well, they don't care about how I feel. Well, they didn't ask about where I want to go. Well, maybe it's because in the past they've asked you 2,500 times and you failed to give a response. So they quit asking. Now you're interpreting it as they don't care and you're blaming them. So, one of the questions that a healthy adult always asks is, what's my part? What's my part in these circumstances? So if I'm feeling overlooked, what's my part? There may not be, or there may only be a small part, or it may be a great deal your part. But you got to ask. You got to ask. So, what are the reasons passive communication can lead to emotional eating or other negative consequences, right? It might not be emotional eating, it might be you're going to drink or you're going to go spend way too much money, or you're going to isolate for the next 3 days and watch TV and not be available or take care of yourself. So, what are the impacts of passive communication? Well, if I'm aware that I'm not standing up for myself in any way, shape, or form, I'm not sharing what I think, I'm not sharing how I feel, I'm not giving my opinions, it's going to be really hard to respect myself. Now, this may be conscious or it may not be conscious, but if you dig into this, it's hard to respect a person, even if that person is yourself, when you don't have any opinion. It's like, it's hard to respect it. You're an adult. You don't share anything. You don't contribute. You don't share. So if I'm not respecting myself, remember, our external behavior in many ways will reflect how I feel about myself in this area. So if on the inside, I'm feeling like, who cares anyway? I don't care. I don't even tell anybody what I think. If I feel that, I'm probably going out down a negative spiral with my thoughts. Negative spiral about my thoughts is oftentimes going to lead to doing something that's going to harm myself. And it may be eating, it may be eating after surgery and eating the wrong things, which is always going to lead to regain. Absolutely. It's also hard for other people to respect you. Another consequence or impact of being a passive communicator is it's going to be really hard for other people to respect you. And that's how we get into that. They don't care about me, and you fall into a little bit of a pity pot. Nobody cares about me. They don't care what I think. Well, you're not telling them. That is your part. You're not telling them. And you may get taken advantage of by others, which of course may lead to you feeling resentful and angry on the inside, feeling dismissed, unimportant, and you've created it. You've created it. And it's easier to point the finger and blame other people and be rude and think how thoughtless they are and how dismissive they are. We got to look at our own part and say, well, maybe if I speak up, if they still act that way, then maybe it's on them. Passive communicators also start to feel really out of control of their life. The struggle to assert themselves can really lead to problems for you because you're not standing up for what you believe, and you may know what it is. You may know exactly what you think and how you feel, but you zip it up. Then you're putting yourself down, and you've put other people on a pedestal. Oh, they're so good about saying what they think and what they want. They're smarter, they're more capable. So now I've got myself in a one down position, which has no reality, and it pushes that idea that every human being has equal value right out the window. So we've got to go back to that. We don't want to put ourselves in a one down position because other people are sure going to take advantage of that. This lack of control can also come across by apologizing for things you're not responsible for because you're like, I'm sorry, it was probably my fault. You make yourself the scapegoat, which again leads to not feeling very respectful of yourself and feeling out of control. Like, why am I saying I'm sorry? I didn't do anything, but I don't want to cause, and you feel out of control, and everything seems to be like way big and emotional. What you tell yourself is you just want to keep the peace. That may be a result from your past, but to what cost? Regain? Feeling powerless? Feeling impotent? Feeling incompetent? Unable to get much accomplished? Is it worth those things? Is the fear so great that you're willing to risk your healthy new weight, your healthy new lifestyle, your ability to be effective in your own world? I don't think it is. And if it's to that point and you are an adult, you really need to get help for that. Now, is there a time and place for passive communication? Yes, there is. If you're in a truly volatile situation, like somebody's losing their crap, right? They're out of control, angry, and they're being volatile. You don't want to match their energy in that case. You do want to stay passive. You want to de-escalate a situation. But hopefully that's not the norm in your life. But it may have been the norm when you were a child. Maybe there was a ranting, raging adult or parent in the house. That would make logical sense for you to become a passive communicator, because who would want to make that situation any worse, especially if you were a child, because that would be terrifying. Remember, you're no longer a child. You don't want to escalate a crazy, angry person anytime. But in a reasonable situation where everybody's being mostly respectful at least, or very respectful at best, you want to overcome that fear. It may be rational and reasonable that you have that fear. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say anything. I don't want. But if it's a situation that warrants your opinion, where your thoughts and feelings are welcome, where your opinion is encouraged, then that would be a healthy thing to work toward. So it stems from, as we just talked, maybe you were raised in a very volatile home and you learned to keep quiet to not make things worse. Makes perfect sense, but it's still not going to serve you well as an adult. Or maybe you were raised in the home where children to be seen and absolutely not heard. Well, you haven't learned, you weren't given permission to share your thoughts, share your feelings. So you don't know how to do it as an adult. Because if children aren't given choices, I mean, even from a little person, do you want this color toothpaste or this color toothpaste? Simple decision, but you start learning, oh, I have choices. I can choose. Would you rather have grapes or an apple? You're still going to have fruit, but I'm giving you a choice. Which would you like to have? Children need these kind of choices because it helps them develop self-efficacy, that word I love so much. I can make good decisions. I can make a decision. And so if you were squelched, in other words, basically told not to speak, not asked to share your thoughts, not asked to share your opinion, or if you tried and it was just shut down. I can't tell you how many people have shared with me that they tried to tell an adult when they were a kid about being sexually abused or some other really tragic situation, and the parent or the adult dismissed them. Well, I'd learned to keep my mouth shut too. But that doesn't work as an adult. So sometimes we learn things as children that are very protective and very wise and very creative as a child to get through. But most of the time, those same protective mechanisms, those defense mechanisms, don't work in the adult world. So we have to unlearn and relearn. You're not going to learn that when you have bariatric surgery. The surgeon is not sitting there while you're in an induced coma through anesthesia, basically. They're not playing a subliminal tape where you get all this good information. You have to seek it out and learn it. One of the reasons I'm grateful that you're listening to the podcast. Sometimes passive communication is related to trauma or other mental health issues. So, like I just said, if you experienced a trauma as a kid and you told somebody and you were neglected, not good. If you were bullied at school or criticized continuously by whomever or whomevers, plural, or you were negatively compared to somebody else all the time, results in low self-esteem. I'm not good enough. I'm not as good as. I can never do anything right. And maybe you were outrightly told, you'll never amount to anything. That blows me away, but I hear it a lot. That people are actually told those things by people who love them. Does a number on a kid's self-esteem. And having low self-esteem as you grow up would give rise to a lack of willingness to share what you think and how you feel, because you're probably questioning yourself. Is this even right? Is this good enough? Is that going to make sense? Are they going to yell at me? Are they going to criticize me? Are they going to make fun of me? Are they going to belittle me? Who wants to put themselves in that situation? So we need to work with a therapist to realize that as children, that icky stuff that happened was not about you. It was about those other people, and that you are lovable and valued and worth every bit as every other good human being on this planet. And then you need to learn to start speaking up. So anxiety, people with anxiety, especially if it's social anxiety, which is a mental health issue, they're going to have a really difficult time not being a passive communicator. This makes it a difficult way to live in the adult world. If you're involved with work, if you're involved in other, unless you're, work from home and don't have a lot of other interaction, it can be really difficult. So again, work with a therapist, learn what these skills are and how to practice them so that you can use them in the real world and feel better about yourself. How can I become a more assertive communication. First of all, like I said, give yourself permission. I give myself permission to share my thought. I give myself permission to let you know how I feel. I give myself permission to share with you what I would like in this relationship or interaction or whatever it happens to be. So, for example, if somebody says to you, where would you like to go to eat? And you're a post-op. Saying, well, I would like one of these 3 places because they have food there that is compatible with what I need to eat. Give yourself permission to say that. You can do it. Maybe you need to write yourself a little note. Oh, yes, I can. On your finger. And then read it. Maybe you need to put a few reminders on your phone and just kind of look at them every once in a while to remind yourself, I give myself permission. Maybe write yourself a literal permission slip. Tape it on your computer. I give myself permission to give my honest thoughts and feelings when asked. You have to give yourself permission to say, I matter. And I matter enough to say what I think. Practice what you want to say ahead of time. This is good to do in therapy or with a best friend or at a support group. When asked where you would like to go to eat, what would your automatic response be? I don't care. All right, let's try a more assertive approach to that. I would like to go to restaurant A, B, or C because the food there is compatible with what I eat. Practice it, practice it, practice it. Have it written down on a piece of paper on your computer. And then if you're having a FaceTime conversation, you can just read it. You've got to practice these things. It is going to be so far from your comfort zone. So far. It's like, you kidding me? You want me to say what? I might as well live on the moon. That's how difficult this can be. Practice it. Because every time you practice, you're that much closer to the moon. Face it, feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel the fear and do it anyway. I'm afraid to say what I think. I'm afraid to say what I think. I'm afraid to say what I think. I'm going to say it anyway. Feel the fear, do it anyway. Have support ahead of time and afterwards. So you want to go in and ask for a raise. You probably might not do that, but let's say you're going to tell your mother you would prefer if she not bring baked goods to your home. So you talk to your friend ahead of time and you plan it out, you practice with your friend. So you've gotten support, you've rehearsed what you want to say, and then maybe you call your mother and say it. And then you call your friend afterwards and go, oh my God, I couldn't stand it. I felt like I was going to throw up, but I did it. And then you celebrate that you felt the fear and you did it anyway. There's a great little warm up you can do to feel more assertive physically. And this is a researched thing. If you stand in a mirror, put your hands on your hips and take kind of a power pose, and you look at yourself in the mirror for 2 solid minutes, thinking, I can do this. I deserve to do this. I want to do this. I am going to say this. It's okay. I am valuable. You do that whole thing for 2 minutes, it's been proven that you're going to be more assertive in the actual situation. So practice it. Do breathing exercises to calm you down before you head into a situation. Use good eye contact. And if that's really difficult for you, do it and then look away. And then do it again and then look away. But practice it. Practice it. Imagine that you're somebody who has good eye contact. If I were a person who were assertive and had good eye contact, what would I do? Well, I would look you in the eye. If I were a person who felt comfortable sharing my thoughts with you, well, I would look you in the eye and use a calm, pleasant voice. I read a book one time and there was a heroine in it. And she just was like the boss lady in a good way. Everybody loved her. She was a good boss. I thought, I'm going to pretend I'm her. And I wish I could remember her name, but I don't. But I'm going to pretend I'm her. And I'm going to go into this meeting and I'm going to put on my acting skills and I'm going to channel her and speak like she would, right? Fake it. Act as if. Imagine you're somebody who would know how to handle that situation. I said, feel the fear and do it anyway, right? Practice, 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 practice. In your therapy, because you're going to therapy, friends, if you're a passive communicator, you need to work through what led to that and giving yourself permission to act it out in the present. Learn and practice setting boundaries, reminding yourself that it's okay. You don't have to people please to the detriment of yourself. You can please people and yourself. But you can say no to the constant requests to do things. You can say no to going to places or seeing people you do not want to see or don't want to be with. So you have to learn how to say no. So instead of saying, of course I'll do that, I'll be happy to do that for you. Write something down. Have a canned response. Thanks for thinking of me. I'm not able to be on the committee this year. End of story. You don't have to explain. You don't have to share any more than that. Thanks for asking. I'm not going to be able to contribute to the bake sale this year. Because you know if you bake, you're going to eat that stuff and you don't want to put yourself in that position. So it's okay to say no. I'm not willing to have that cosmetics party for you. I'm just uncomfortable. Enough said. I said no. I'm not willing to do that. I heard something one time and I thought this was wonderful. Somebody was talking about, it was my son who told me this, talking about children and bravery. And for some kids, it's like, I'm going to go on the roller coaster. I'm really brave. And for other kids, it's, I'm going to say, I'm not willing to go on the roller coaster. I'm really brave. It's brave to say that, right? So look at situations in different ways. It's okay to say what's true for you. It's not easy, but it's okay. So give yourself permission, get the help you need to come up with what to say, and then practice, 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 practice. Have support when you go in, have support when you come out, and allow yourself a redo. So let's say in the moment you're not aware that somebody's going to ask you to do something and your default is to say, oh, absolutely. You can go back to that person and say, you know what, I said I would do that. It's not what I wanted to say. I'm just not willing to do that at this time. So you can go back if you're like, oh, I fell into my passive role. You can go back. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. So here's your take-home messages today. Although you might think that people aren't noticing this passive communication style that you have, they might even just think you're an easygoing person, right? In the long run, being this way is disrespectful to you, and other people are probably going to end up disrespecting you as well. They might even take advantage of you. That's not what you want, what you deserve, or who you want to be. Number 2, you are deserving and worthy and capable of sharing your thoughts, of saying what you think, of asking for what you want and need. It doesn't mean people have to bow down and give it to you, but reminding yourself that if you don't, and if you fall into that negative spiral, it might mean you're going to go comfort yourself with food. Maybe that alone will be enough to give you the courage to speak up for yourself. And thirdly, assertive communication is healthy. Assertive communication is very respectful of self. It's very respectful of others. And it's a win-win all the way around. So your challenge, your action item, is to challenge yourself to feel the fear and speak up on your own behalf in 2 specific situations this week. And then tell somebody about it. Enjoy your win, or enjoy talking about, oh my God, I did this and it was absolutely awful, but I did it, right? Talk it out. And then check out the whole Berry Aftercare program, www.berryaftercare.com. Encourage other people, please, to listen to the podcast. And I would so much love if you would share some feedback with me. Things you would like me to talk about, things you would like to maybe contribute. If you'd like to be on the podcast, let me know. So we're going to finish up this series on communication next week by visiting a 4th form of unhealthy communication. Can definitely lead to emotional eating, which ultimately leads to regain. And we're going to give examples how to tweak that communication style into being the assertive communicator you want to be. So all the skills that we learn and practice in the bariatric care program are not taught to you in a bariatric program, not taught to you in a weight loss clinic, are not sent with the directions to the Mounjaro shot. You've got to seek these out and learn them. So thank you so, so, so much for being a part of this program. I hope that what I offer are things that you can take into your life and use to improve your overall lifestyle and definitely help you maintain your weight loss in your Berry Aftercare world. So, as always, we're talking about your health, your responsibility this day and every day. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.